Good morning. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hey, Muddy. A few people. Hey, Blue.
Morning.
Hello, hello. We've had. Oh, is that me? I've got a bit of echo going on. Maybe it's gone now. Okay. Echo. Yeah, it wasn't me. I thought it might have been a YouTube replaying, but no, I had stopped that. All right. Well, hello everyone. Another exciting episode of Obvio Q&A. We can have a chat about what you're playing around with Obvio, what you're thinking of, and inevitably we'll talk about events in general, digital events and how you're doing those, and also some production questions at the end. We often do, but we love starting off with your Obvio questions. We've got one that's come in, so there is a on the dashboard you can enter ask a question that you came through. You can click that, and that's how we get the questions in. And then you can type in the Zoom chat as well, often on the topic that we're on, about the question that we're looking at. So we'll start off with a first question by Dorita. Not sure if she's here, but that's okay. She can watch the recording. A blog post that is an image does not have the two-line feature to move it to the bottom of the post space. And I kept getting a server error. I have a screenshot, she says. So I should check when that was sent. Maybe she sent that earlier, that question, but I haven't seen it. Have you noticed this, Blue? If you just have an image in a blog post, we may not get.
I haven't, but I don't
Right.
know that I've I don't know that I've actually tried that in quite some time, so I'm not sure.
No, we may not get to the bottom of this one without Dorita's input, but I'm having a little play now just to see. I don't see. So there's when you put an image in, there is the little return symbol at the top and the bottom that gives you, pushes it down or gives you space at the bottom or gives you space at the top. I think that's what she's referring to, but I'm not certain. So if you're watching the recording, Dorita, sorry, we can't answer that question, and catch us next time, and we can see what's going on there for you. And that's the end of our questions. So thanks everyone for coming. It's been a good morning. So you are welcome to put questions into the ask questions on the dashboard. At this point, you could also raise your hand if you have a particular question, as people are still filing in at this early stage. Blue, did you have any updates to share or anything to talk about?
This last week has been mostly bug fixes. I know that the team recently started working on the new template that we've hinted at. That's coming, and we just did a reshuffle of internal priorities to get a little bit faster focus on marketplace. So I'm hoping that we'll see a little bit of traction on that in the next couple of weeks. We have a back end thing that we are working on to solve a scaling issue for really large events that is right in front of that. Again, something that we're doing a lot of work on. It's going to take a couple of weeks, and in the end, it'll look exactly the same to everybody else. Those are the sort of features that are not fun to talk about on these calls, but I'm pretty excited about. I don't know that I have. I think, Grant, everything else has been support app related for the last couple of weeks. Yeah. And I mean, I'll share this with you guys because, This is just a small group of folks. But up until this point, our support systems for Obvio have been a little bit tricky to manage because you needed access to code and a few other things to dive into certain things. If people had questions about their subscription or questions about charges that were made, or if we just needed to get into somebody's account, there were things that needed to happen that required myself or Grant or a developer to get involved. And this summer we started working on a small application that enables our support team, Heather, James, Chuck, honestly, even myself and Grant, better visibility into, or easier visibility into what people are doing on the platform. So we've actually, the last month or so, a couple of developers have been kind of siloed on that particular project. Again, that's the sort of project that's really important for us as a company. But for you as individual users, doesn't really have a major impact unless you call or go into support and interact with Heather. And if she's able to get into your account, give you answers really quickly, or if you start noticing that she can give you answers quicker than she used to be able to without saying something along the lines of, let me check in with the development team and get back with you, that's a result of that support application. So it is, it's definitely something that is valuable, but is not necessarily something that you'll interact with every day on the front end of the application. So there you go. The other thing that, pardon me?
Bit of inside baseball.
Yeah, exactly. I will tell you that later today, there's going to be a change to the export attendees function at the area and the room level. So currently, if you go to export attendees at the area or room level, you get an export of all the attendees who joined that area during the event or that room during the event, depending on which you choose. And at the end of it, there's two extra columns that shows you, or two columns that were added earlier this year that show you the number of joins, the number of times each attendee landed in Zoom, as well as the total duration that they spent inside of Zoom. That export attendees button is going to change in terms of what it says specifically. It's going to change from export attendees to, I believe, log. I think that's what export log. And when you click on it, you're going to have a little drop down that gives you two options, one that says summary and one that says detailed log. Summary is the current view, exactly what you guys get right now, which is one line of that CSV that is for each individual attendee, how many times they joined, total duration inside of Zoom. There's then going to be an option for a detailed log. And what that gives you is an individual line for each time an attendee was in Zoom. So if you have an event and I attend that event and I go in and out of Zoom 10 times, I'll actually show up in that detailed log 10 times, and you'll see my start, like my entry time, my exit time, and the total duration in Zoom. So that's part of our effort to expand statistics. From there, over the course of the next few weeks, I'm hoping by the end of this month, you're going to see some pretty significant changes inside of Obvio, mostly on the statistics page, to allow you to see some of these details. So what we're going to start doing is, rather than having you have to export a list of attendees the way you do now, is on the stats page, you're going to see a graph that can be time coded. So you can say, okay, show me a graph from Monday, July 1st to Friday, July 5th. sure those dates don't actually match up, but whatever, let's just say they do. You'll then be able to see a graph of how many attendees were active or in Zoom at those particular times. You're going to be able to drill down and say, okay, show me this by area, right? So I want to see that for the main stage area. And then you're going to be able to drill down one step further and say, all right, if you have multiple rooms, say, show me that for room 1. You're then also going to be able to drill further down or further compress the time frame, right? So rather than a 5-day window, let me see everybody who was online between this time and this time on this day, right? So between 6 and 8 p.m. on Wednesday, July 3rd. That'll then show you that graph, same idea, right? Like this is how many people were online during that time window. But there's going to be a step at which you can actually start to see the attendees who were present. And the next layer of that is to be able to export those specific attendees so that you can essentially get a detailed log view from the stats page. But we're also working on being able to implement actions at that level. So what actions would be are, I want to tag all of these attendees, right? So based on my filtering, based on my searches, based on my stats window, I want to tag all of these attendees with a specific tag. Or I want to tag all of these attendees with a specific tag through one of the service integrations like Keep, MailChimp, HubSpot, ActiveCampaign, whatever, Zapier. Something else that's on our list is, as part of those actions, to also be able to send a broadcast specifically to those people. So anyway, these are the sorts of things that we are working on. Some of the stuff that I just shared will probably be a little bit more long-term, but being able to export the attendees based on the specific date range and see who those attendees are, that's what we are aiming for to have done by the end of this month. So I think I'm really excited about that. I'm really excited about being able to have visibility into that. But to be frank, the thing I'm most excited about is the ability to not just have visibility into that, but be able to actually take actions based on that information. So it'll export to CSV, Stephanie. So generally all the exports that we do are CSV based, but CSV files can then of course be imported very easily into Excel.
It's great. Yeah, it's very exciting. We're thinking about, particularly for enrollment-based events, but it makes me think about all sorts of different events that run, and particularly longer events where you have people that come and go, and being able to know who was on at a particular time and then tag them to say that they were there for a particular session or a particular presentation or something. Yeah. A sponsor's, a sponsor's pitch or something, that all of those sorts of things I think is going to be really quite exciting.
Or continuing education, right? I mean, for events that need visibility into who was present to be able to issue CE credits, that's something that you'll be able to use those statistics for, right? Because if you can say, okay, we had a CE credit session, and this is generally how CE credits work, right? We had a CE credit session on day 1 between 11 and 12. And, as long as somebody was present for a minimum of 45 minutes of that time frame, I want to give them a CE credit. So you'll be able to say, okay, here's the time frame. Give me the summary view so I can see the total duration for each attendee who was present during that window, and then provide either, give action externally, or take action externally, or take action internally. So there you go.
It's great. Maybe it's pronounced Jamie. Is it Jamie? You go by Jamie.
Yeah, it's not Jaime.
Jamie.
Although that is my nickname because I grew up in California. So
nice.
So first I wanted to give a shout out to Muddy because after my tech panic, he walked me through like the basics and I got all my tech set up and he sent me my Amazon list. And so it's all set up. So thank you, Muddy. So now I'm working on Obvio and Heather's setting up my dashboard. And I'm now, there may be somewhere in the member hub that has a training. I'm a little, all the pieces I'm trying to track. So my questions, I have a few questions, are kind of the basic ones, but I just want to make sure I'm getting my people in there. I know how to get in there. I have a VA who's going to run it. I just want to, like, where do I go to make sure that I've got all the pieces?
Yeah, we've actually
No,
got.
that's like a very broad question.
Yeah, no, that's good, and that's exactly what these calls are for, right? That they're for the basic questions and they're for the advanced questions and everything in between. So it's great. Thank you for exploring all of that with us. So we have actually done a whole bunch of videos. We call them onboarding videos, as kind of stepping through all the different elements of the dashboard and how to build out a dashboard, and also all of the aspects of the team, the organization, building the team, getting those in there, how attendees get in, all of those aspects. And actually, there's on the dashboard that you just came through, there is a link to those videos. Let me see what the name is there. Is it called onboarding videos? So I was just trying to pull it up. But let me just, it is, yep. So you'll find a link there, and then there's some longer. What we did, Blue did almost all of them. Step through how to do all the different aspects, and what we did is recorded these sessions that step through lots of the different aspects of a particular section of functionality of Obvio, and those have been cut up into smaller clips that we are yet to put through the whole site. And what we're calling them like tooltip videos, which means that in lots of the areas on the menu items, some of the different sections on the dashboard editor, we're going to have these little like a question mark button basically, and click on that, and then it'll open up a video that will show you how to do that particular function. We're working on that right at the moment. In the meantime, you can access the longer form sessions that we recorded live. And so it seems like a long time, because they're sort of a couple of hour sessions at a time. But what they do is they build on each other. And so you can watch through these videos. And we've had a few people that have needed to build a dashboard and have just kind of binged all of those videos and have seen exactly how to do all of the functions of Obvio. Obvio. I don't know on my lips. So that's what you can do in the meantime until we have added these all through the site, which will make it a bit easier when you want to just do one particular thing. You'll be able to get to that part of those videos directly. So can you see that on the dashboard? If you go back to the dashboard that you came through for this call, if you were to move the Zoom window out of the way, you should see the dashboard still sitting there.
Yes.
And there's a big button there. It says onboarding videos. Does it say that?
I see
It says
audio
workshop
knowledge
recordings.
Workshop recordings. Thank you. Workshop
Okay.
recordings. Yeah. So if you click that, that's going to take you to Searchy, which is an integration partner that we use as well. And Searchy hosts all those videos and makes it really easy to search. They all have transcripts, and you can also search for particular words, and that would take you to those sections in those videos. If you were looking for something in particular, that's one way that you could find those. So starting at the start of those would really work through organization, team, all of those things that you're just mentioning about getting your people in. And then you'll sort of work through all the different aspects and then getting your attendees in as well. So there's all of that. But is there a sort of burning question that you're thinking of right at the moment that we might be able to tackle this morning, or what are you thinking?
Well, I probably will be able to find it in there. Thank you. I was just wanting to make sure that I was able to send everybody the link to register. I wanted to be sure the VA knew what they were doing. They've never used Obvio before. And then
Can I ask just a really quick clarifying question? What CRM do you use? Like, what do you use to normally broadcast emails and communicate with your list?
I use MailChimp.
Okay. So inside of in order to get attendees from MailChimp into Obvio, there's a native MailChimp integration. And if you go under attendees and you go to services, you'll see a MailChimp icon. And what you have to do, Grant, I think you've actually done more work with the MailChimp integration than I have, but you have to create a list inside of MailChimp. Is it a list?
An audience?
Mm-hmm. An audience. Yeah, that's what I was looking. Thank you. You have to create a specific audience inside of MailChimp that is for your attendees. And then you add all of your attendees specifically to that audience. And what Obvio will do is anybody who gets added to that audience will automatically be imported into Obvio. And then Obvio can then write the login URL back into MailChimp into a custom field that you designate. Okay. And then what your user or what your VA can do is they can just send welcome emails or, come join us emails from MailChimp rather than having to learn the broadcaster inside of Obvio. So that's one way to do it. Tell me about how many people do you think you'll have at your event?
I'm estimating I've got 20 registered now. It's October 19th, so I'm imagining about 25.
So, I think personally, if I was you, I think going through the process of connecting Obvio and MailChimp is a good exercise, so that you see how it's going to work. The reality is you could probably just export a list of attendees from MailChimp and manually import them into Obvio, and then send your attendees an email through the Obvio broadcaster, and that process would be easier. Okay. Right? On a certain level, that process would be easier. What it doesn't allow for, though, and the reason why we tend to favor the service integrations is because if you send out a series of emails, or you send out your first email, or you export that list from MailChimp, your list of attendees, right? And you then import it into Obvio. And then after you do that, somebody signs up for the event, that person isn't in Obvio. That person doesn't get automatically imported because you're doing it manually. So for that reason, I think that the service integrations work really nicely, because if somebody signs up, as long as you have the automations set up correctly inside of MailChimp, so that when somebody signs up to your event, they're added to that audience automatically, as long as you have that step done, then they'll automatically be imported into Obvio. Okay. So yeah, I mean, that process is not hard. There's a couple of things that are key, and your VA should know how to do this. But number one is setting up the audience in MailChimp. Number two, setting up the custom field where you're going to store the login URL in MailChimp. And then number three, making sure you have automation in place. So however your attendee signs up, once they sign up, they're added to that audience automatically. And all of that is doable within MailChimp.
Okay.
And then once you have those things on the MailChimp side, connecting the Obvio integration or connecting Obvio is, honestly, it's a snap. It shouldn't take take you more than a couple of minutes to do. Like it's
Okay.
really not difficult. But you need those things in place in order to do that.
Got it. Okay.
And if
Thank
you
you.
want to have your VA do it and then come back on, like, do those things, have the audience ready, have your custom field in MailChimp ready to go, and then come back and have us walk you through doing that, we can do that. Yeah, we could do that on like next week's call if you wanted to, which is still, a week before your event, at least.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Great.
Yeah, and Sarah's not wrong, right? If you have email updates that get sent to you or your VA as people sign up for the event, you could add them manually into Obvio, onesie twosie. Like you definitely could do that. I just think that if this is not the only time you're going to use Obvio and you're going to do it at some point again in the future, going through the exercise of connecting MailChimp and Obvio is not a horrible idea.
Right. Yeah. And I want them to be bigger in the future too. So
yeah, and the bigger they are, the harder that is, right? Like if you get to the point where you have a couple hundred people, you don't want your VA basically spending half of the time that you pay her adding people into Obvio manually. Just let the system do that automatically for you.
Right. Okay.
And we talk about that sort of thing a lot. If it works big, it works small. And if we can think about how we would do it, how we would set up these events at scale, then I always think about all those steps that you can automate that will happen, that just happen on the day, so that if people are signing up on the day, moments before you're going live, you don't need to worry about anything. That's all just going to happen automatically. You're not chasing down those emails. It's such a bad attendee experience too when it feels like it's a manual process, and so then they're waiting for the email instantly, because we all do, right? You sign up to something and it's like, okay, how do I get into this thing? And they're waiting to get their access. You kind of want that to be instant. So it's a cool thing to set up, and that's why we have all those different integrations that we have going. And MailChimp's a good one. The MailChimp automation on when someone signs up, and then so that they get an email when they sign up, is a little bit finicky, I've found. Like it just takes a little while to get those steps in place, the automation step. And totally got it working, but it can be a little, it's not as easy as some other systems, but I have liked MailChimp.
Thank you. Grant, you should do like meditations, recorded meditations.
Yeah.
No, you just have to ask him to. We're coming to the season. He has to sing you Christmas carols. Is really what has to happen.
You have a very calming voice. I go back to sleep now.
But I've also got a bit of a cold thing that's happening again now too. So we got that bit of extra huskiness that's coming in. So I don't know if that's soothing or not, but it is also 11 o'clock at night here, so that helps. So maybe a meditation right now would be great, and then I can just drift off to sleep.
Thank you.
I thought we had Stephanie had her hand up, but that's gone down. So, hey Scott, welcome back.
Hey, good morning.
Hey.
Yeah, that soothing voice, man. You could put it away. I was out late last night. It's like you're putting me to sleep, dude. But it's okay. It's nice.
Oh, I'll get more.
And you can't make money out of it. Yeah. Okay, some simple basic clarity questions. I did, I think, what I wasn't supposed to do when I was trying my first meeting, because I think I've heard Blue say many times, just set the start time really early and don't worry about it. Well, I got stupid and I put it right to the minute of starting a meeting. Yeah, I see the nods, I know. And kind of had about 75 people who couldn't get in. So now I know, set it early, give it time. I was a little concerned that that I couldn't set it. I couldn't fix it. I couldn't figure out how to get them in, even though I made the mistake. Is there, in case I ever do it again, and I won't, is there a way to do that?
So it sounds.
Or
So it
maybe that's not
sounds
what
like
happened.
they. Yeah. So what you have to do is you have to set the start date of the event. You can't set the start date of an event in the past. So this is a little bit of a finicky thing, right? So let's say it's 8:30, like it is right now, and you want to fix the problem that you're talking about. You actually have to really quickly set your date to 8:31. And then you have to make sure that you change your end date, because the system currently, when you set a start date in the future, changes the end date to match the start date, which is probably a bug that we should fix. So you have to change your start date to be 1 minute, because the same problem happens after the event ends as happens before the event starts, right? So if you happen to change, like let's just say hypothetically, you managed when you were in this, because I know what happens in these moments. They tend to be high stress. They tend to be somewhat panic filled, and you don't pay full attention because you're rushing to try and get it fixed quickly. I'm not talking about you specifically, Scott. I'm more talking
you
about
are.
me.
Absolutely, you are. So it's okay.
Right. So you click the button, and then you go up and you click save, and then you think it's fixed, and you may actually get one or two people that get into the event during that 8:31 time frame. But the moment that 8:31 time frame goes away, you're going to have the same problem, and then you just don't know what happened. So what you need to do is you need to set your start date to fix the problem. You need to set your start date like 1 minute from now, so that when you click save, it's still in the future. And then you need to set your end date to like tomorrow or a couple days from now or whenever. Who cares about when it is? In the future, right? After your event is over.
Okay.
And then you click save. And once you do that, then and your area is open inside of Obvio, then once 8:31 hits, then your attendees will be able to get in. So it's a little bit of a what we should have is some language on that page that says, don't set your start date for the event to the start of your event, right? It's almost like a little bit of languaging that we need to fix, because generally speaking, like I'll tell you, for me, best practices when I'm creating an event is I set the start date to be the day before I need access to anything, because nobody sees that start date. The start and end date is not visible to anybody except you or users who log into the back end, like to the admin of Obvio. So and while we used to, there used to be a difference in charge, like in how much it cost to use Obvio if you had longer than 4-day events, right? But in November of last year, we changed that to now allow unlimited events. So the start and end date used to be important from a billing perspective, but it no longer is. So you can have, even if your event is only 1 day, you can set up your event to start 5 days before and end 5 days after. Like there's no downside to doing that. And that way you just won't have that problem. So those start and end dates are, to a certain extent, a little bit of a legacy, piece of legacy information that we don't quite use anymore. We've actually talked about eliminating them entirely, but haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah.
It was one of those things where I knew it completely. The fix for me is just set it 5 days in advance and forget about it. But old school, I wasn't thinking about it, and I used to setting for the time and showing up, and that deal. A couple minor questions while I have you, if I may. Could you give me the quick? And I should go look at the onboarding. I haven't got there yet, but a little confused about the difference between area and rooms. You get multiple areas, multiple rooms. I'm sure it's been asked 1,000 times before, but I think I missed that one. Could you help me with that?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So, Grant and I, when we came up with the scheme for the Zoom, like how Zoom works, we created Obvio thinking about it from a live in-person event perspective. And areas tend to be very similar to what we call in the in-person world ballrooms. Okay. And inside of ballrooms, you tend to have, especially if you walk into a really big ballroom that has thousands of chairs in it, you have sections inside of those ballrooms, right? Sections of chairs. And a room is kind of like a section inside a ballroom. So for us, what that translates to is you can have one area, and let's call the area the main stage, right? Or you can call it the Canary Ballroom or whatever you want to call it, right? If you happen to have a hotel that you've been to, you can literally call it whatever you want. It doesn't actually matter. But we generally use the term main stage for where our attendees are going to be. Inside of that ballroom, or inside of that area equals ballroom, you can then have one section or multiple sections. And it just depends on how big your event is. If you're going to have if you're going to do breakout sessions of 5 to 6 people, then you really don't want a section or room to be more than about 500 to 600 people, because you can do 100 breakout sessions inside of Zoom. But if you want to expand your event size and you want to have a couple thousand people at your event, while you're going to need the hardware to support that, right? The hardware to get you and your image into Zoom, Obvio provides the way to give you multiple access to those Zoom rooms, right? Multiple sections or rooms inside of an area. And then when your attendees join the main stage, they are distributed automatically between the areas that are open or the sections that are open. So at a high level, that's the main difference.
Okay.
So, when if you were to look at one of the events that we have, at any given point, when I say we, I mean Sage. So Sage would have, when we do a virtual event, we'll have a main stage. We'll usually have a help desk area that has one room in it where our team is to answer any questions that people may have. We'll have a tech check area that gets used during the pre-event time to check people into the event. Oftentimes we'll have something called a lobby. That lobby will be, it's the equivalent of like a back of room table in an in-person event. When an offer is made or an invitation is made to do something, you can have conversations about that specific offer. And then it's not uncommon for us to have like a speaker area where we bring remote speakers in. That starts to get a little bit more complicated, but that's what our events generally look like. And then it's also not uncommon for us to have a series of team rooms. So we'll create a room inside of Obvio that attendees never see, but we use internally for team meetings for this event, right? And then we'll give our clients a link to that team room. So I hope that helps. There are times that it could be.
No, it does. I appreciate that. Thank you for painting the picture that way. A lot of clarity there. And having come back from the funnel hacking event and saw a big ballroom, it's got a big picture in my head now. So, by the way, Sage did great.
Yeah, it was a pretty fun event.
Question around that, like in the middle of that, but can I ask one little piece? What you just said.
Yeah, let's just double check to make sure Scott doesn't have any other questions, and we'll bounce up to you, Heather.
Nope, not right now. I'll think more. Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, sounds good.
Just on the piece you said, I just want to continue the thread. So for hardware, if you're going to have, let's say we have 4 or 5 rooms open during the event, not the separate rooms for different stuff like lobby, and you're pushing one speaker, how does that work? Does Obvio already know that this is the main stage and this is the speaker? Does it just connect all the different Zoom areas into that main speaker? Or is that something on a technology side or a hardware side?
Yeah, so it depends. When you say connect, it just depends on how you mean. So with virtual events, there are 2 challenges. Let's just say this, with multi-Zoom room virtual events, there are 2 things that you have to consider. one, how do I get my attendees into these Zoom rooms? And two, how do I get myself, like my video, into these Zoom rooms?
That's why I'm asking.
Obvio takes care of Obvio takes care of the attendee side. You have to take care of the hardware side. And how you do that is a really deep and broad question because there's a few different answers. But generally speaking, what we've spoken about in the past is taking a video feed and an audio feed and getting it into each computer that is hosting a different Zoom room. And how you go from there really varies pretty wildly. You can have, setups that are super elaborate, like the one that is in Vegas at Wari Studios that we helped to set up, that has 48 computers that can all be tied together, and has a couple $1 million worth of gear that's actually driving that. It can be a little bit simpler, like what we have at the Sage Studios, where but even in our case, we have I don't know, a few $100,000 worth of gear driving that. Or you can get a little bit less complicated and figure out how to do 1, 2, or 3 Zoom rooms. And we've talked about this in the past. The easiest things to use to do that, if you're going to keep it under 3, a Rodecaster, like the Rodecaster Pro or Pro, is it called the Rodecaster, guys? That's what it is, right?
Yep.
Yeah. The Rodecaster 2, thank you, Money, not the Rodecaster 3. The Rodecaster 2 is great from an audio perspective because it has the ability to connect 2 computers via USB and a third via Bluetooth. And then, pair that with an ATEM Extreme that has the ability to connect 2 of those computers via USB-C. And then you can get like a little Elgato, what are those things called? Camlink? Camlink, that's what it's called, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You can get a little Camlink for under $200 and take an HDMI feed off of the ATEM Extreme and plug that into your third computer. Now you have 3 computers receiving audio and video from you, right? How you set that up beyond that, starts to depend on your level of expertise.
So I need an Extreme, not a Pro, because I'm ATM Pro, but I think we're not there yet, but we're almost there. We're basically having maybe 2 areas. They're growing, so that's why I was like looking at that line. So that's fine.
So if you have the ATEM Extreme, the ATEM Pro, you could run a second room. If your audio is also being fed into the ATEM through a camera or something along those lines, as long as you have the audio going into the ATEM, you could use the HDMI out on the ATEM Mini Pro, plug that into a Camlink, and have the second room essentially be a mirror of the first room. You could do it that way. It's little detailed questions, but I just wanted to see where the hardware needs to be going as we grow, and that you answered the question. I know it can get really complicated, but you answered the question. Thanks. Yeah, it can get really complicated. But I'll tell you this, we have had I've run 5 or 6 meetings off of the hardware that you're talking about, that you have. The difference is, instead of a Camlink to take the HDMI feed and feed it into a computer, we have devices by a company called Magwell. I never know how they actually say it. But they essentially do the same thing as a Camlink. They just cost twice the amount. But what they have is they have an HDMI in, and they have an HDMI out, or a loop, which allows you to connect your HDMI feed from your ATEM into Magewell number 1, and then and connect that to computer one, and then loop out of Magewell number one into Magewell number two and go into another computer. And you could do that, I don't want to say an infinite number of times, but you really could, run a bunch of meetings that way. You still need a computer and a Magewell for each one. You still need to make sure that your ATEM Mini Pro has the program audio feed going into it. But as long as you have those things, you can absolutely do that.
Okay, perfect. And it's called Magewell. I'm trying to write that down. You want to have a name for that? Magewell?
Yeah, I'll one of us will drop a link in the we'll drop a link in the chat.
That's a new one for me,
But
Magewell.
yeah, I think they're like, yeah, because that company makes a whole bunch of stuff. But what we're talking about specifically is
Oh, and also wanted to give you a heads up, the Go High Level connection still has, it's not still working for us. And that, don't want to talk about it, but I just wanted to give you a heads up. We're going to try it again next week. I don't know why.
Yeah, I'd recommend, given the fact that you continue to have issues with that, you reach out to support, or come on this call from a computer, so we can share screen and see what's going on. Because we've attempted to, like I've tried to replicate the problems that the problem you have described on the last call, and we didn't have that issue. So I have a feeling it has to do with the setup issue, and we just have to figure out what the setup problem is that you're having.
I'll come back next week then with it. I'll call back support.
Cool.
Cool, thank you. Thanks for letting me type in.
Jump the line, no problem.
Yeah, I would just say too on all of that is that we're talking about an event probably with 1,500, 2,000 attendees. That's a significant event, and you would never dream of trying to do that in a ballroom and just kind of walk in with a laptop and plug it into the lectern and try to run your whole AV for 2,000 people, in person.
Well, some people do. It's just kind of funny to watch that.
So generally you would have an AV team that are going to handle all that for you. And particularly when you're talking those sorts of numbers, that's really what you want to do. And have a team that's looking after making all that work. But I was just watching a few people glaze over as we're diving into the production details of how to run multiple rooms in an area. So, but it's good to know that this is the thing that there's two things I just want to mention about Obvio, which I think are really unique, and they're linked. And that is that we have doubled down on doing all of our events in Zoom meeting and not webinar. And so that's why there's some complexity. Zoom meeting is limited to 1,000 people. You may have been on a Zoom webinar where there's been 50,000. You can have 50,000 attendees in a webinar. It's essentially a live stream at that point, right? It could be on YouTube because you can't see anyone, and what we have found is that there are lots of advantages and very few disadvantages to having being able to see people's faces, being able to actually see your attendees, and for them to be able to see each other, and for them to be able to do breakout rooms, and for that sort of thing. And so that's a really key difference. And then we knew that from day one, I guess probably minus before like we got Obvio off the ground, we needed to do multiple meetings. That was Blue's thing right in at the start of the pandemic. An event for 400 people turned into an event for 1,200 people, and instantly needed to go to multiple Zoom meetings to make all that work. I'm so glad he did, because that was the birth of Obvio, and where we're at now was really doubling down on being able to see our audience, and from a focus of our hosts being able to see the audience. And that's a real key difference as well, right? We often think about, what do the attendees see? And it doesn't matter what the hosts see. But actually, it's both. having the host being able to see attendees' faces and and interacting with them makes your event better. And so that's why we have built so many of our features around being able to scale beyond 1,000 and still in meeting. And so that's where that's come. And so inevitably we're talking about production techniques and setups and things, because it does get complex. It's amazing what we're actually doing when you think about having thousands of people and being able to see all of their faces, at least on the different pages. So, Brian,
And
sorry.
I think what's interesting also, just talking about this, and then we'll jump over to Brian. You can of course do larger events in like Zoom webinar as an example, right? But Zoom webinar, the moment you go over 1,000 attendees, costs because the next level up is 3,000. It's $990 a month. And if you're doing a weekly event, or semi-weekly or whatever it is that you're doing, Heather, or anybody here, and you need that for a period of time, the Obvio price point is such that it's way less than Zoom webinar when you think about that. And if you go up to 5,000 attendees, if you happen to have an event that's that big, it's $2,500 a month. If you happen to go up to 10,000 or really over 5,000 attendees, it's $6,400 a month. So Zoom webinar, while it has the capability to go up over 5,000 people, gets really expensive really fast, right? And that's monthly. That's not an annual cost. That's their cost per month. And if you took that money and you invested it in a couple of pieces of hardware, in 1 month, you could have 5 computers with a little intake to allow yourself to host 4 to 5 to 6 different Zoom meetings simultaneously. And now all of a sudden, your Obvio fees are they're way less than Zoom webinar, and you don't have that fee every month because you own the hardware. So, if you do 2 of these in a year, let's just say you only do 2 events that are over 5,000 people, and that price point is $6,500 per month. You can disconnect your Zoom meeting, right? Your Zoom webinar account after 1 month and then reconnect it. But you're still spending $13,000 for the 2 months that you need to have those events active. You can really buy a lot of cool stuff for $13,000, just saying. So, and have a better experience for your attendees, and have a better experience for you, and have better conversions, because when people see each other, it naturally generates a community, right? Without you even having to try. When all of a sudden your attendees can see each other, you naturally create community. And community is one of the things that really helps to make, live events special.
All
right.
I feel like
Blue. Yeah.
I feel like Blue and I can just keep bouncing off each other. But
we could, you guys could ask no questions and we could fill the next hour and a half.
We can keep talking. But very quickly, I will just talk about here it is. The thing about community. Honestly, I think I think our world has changed. It was already changing before COVID, and I think COVID pushed us another 5 years into the future. And where that change is, I believe, is around content. There's so much content. We have content paralysis. It's like there's plenty of content around. What we're craving is community. And so we want to connect with other people. Now, the content is still the honeypot. It's still what brings people to the thing, to the connection. But what keeps them there is community. And so that's one of the things that we are focused on, is how do we do community better? And you need to be able to see people. Just a chat is 20 years ago. Chat, we use chat a lot. What I'm saying is, if chat was the only interaction you had, it's not enough. We want to be able to see faces. We want to be able to see people laughing when we make a joke. We want to be able to, get up and dance around and do stuff. And all of that globally. That's what's changed. And so the more niche that your product is, often the larger the community can be too, right? Because you have a larger reach globally, and you have a more passionate community base because they're connecting with people that have similar interests and stuff. So that's what we're finding more and more. Content is still really important, but it's not king. All right, Brian. Need to unmute there.
Hi. Yes.
Hey.
Hi. Good morning. Good evening. Good afternoon. So perhaps this is an email that's received at every for Obvio call. We will be offering tips on how to maximize the platform, provide updates on new features, and walk you through the essentials for creating your custom event dashboard. Two things: previous calls are recorded, and where would I find those previous Obvio question and answer calls?
Rather than go that route, are you trying to, Brian, are you trying to kind of jumpstart like your knowledge around the platform?
Yeah, the walking through the essentials really drew me to come this morning. The essentials for creating the custom event dashboard. Yes.
I do love that it drew you this morning. But that email has essentially been the same since I wrote it 2 years ago. What I'm going to say is I just dropped in the chat a link to a series of videos that are our onboarding workshop, and I would recommend that you start with those. Don't go back to previous Q&A calls, because previous Q&A, how these Q&A calls have evolved, and maybe it's time for me to revisit that email. But how these Q&A calls have evolved is they really have become just that, right? It's an opportunity for people who have specific questions to come and get specific answers. And in between these calls, and we do them every week, right? And we alternate between morning and afternoon. So this week is an 8 a.m. call. Next week will be a 5 p.m. call. I'm, of course, talking Eastern time. Grant has a much different time schedule than I do, but we show up at the same time, oddly enough. Most of the time. Sometimes one of us, usually me, doesn't show up. Once you kind of have started, working through the platform or working through those videos, any questions that you have, it doesn't matter how beginner or how advanced they are, we're happy to answer. Questions like, where do I start? It's a little less specific, and it's why I would recommend you start with those onboarding workshop videos. The other thing to remember, Brian, I think you're in Leap. Actually, I know you're in Leap. And as a Leap member, our team will actually build your first dashboard for you. And what that looks like is we take a look at your things that you already have that are your design styles. You pick a template, and then our team builds out the shell of the dashboard for you. You then still have to add the content, add speakers, add resources, things like that. But we kind of get you started with a design that you're happy with, using the template that you're happy with. The reality is, though, you still kind of need to know, what, how the platform works, because you still have to actually use it. So I still think that those onboarding workshop videos are probably the best place to start. They are a little bit long, as Grant said. There's like 16 hours of content, but I feel like I talk pretty slow in them. You could probably watch them at double speed and be okay, and reduce it to 8 hours. It's pretty awesome. So that's the direction that I would go. Nancy, I would give yourself, for people who are in Leap who want us to design their next event for them, give us a 2-week window. Don't expect it to happen right away, but it's not uncommon for the turn to be much faster than that.
Thank you.
Feels like that got missed in that case, Nancy. So just email Laura and just say, hey, WTF. I'd probably put a smiley face after that.
I
You're welcome.
so I totally agree that these calls, trying to filter through all of these calls is probably you're probably not going to find sort of that entry level. Occasionally there is sort of that entry level questions and things. The key reason that we continue to, and I just put the link into the YouTube channel of these live streams. We just live stream it to YouTube just so it's easily accessed afterwards. And often people who can't make it for the week will jump on almost like a podcast and just listen to it, and it's there's always a question or two that is of interest to you, more so than using it as a research tool in that sense. That's where the onboarding videos are particularly helpful. And also the dashboard is accessible 24/7, right? So you can come back to that dashboard and you can put questions in and not even show up to the weekly call, and we'll still answer the question. And then you could go back to that YouTube video and you would find the answer to your question. So that can be helpful with sort of time shifting. If you have a real specific question and you can't make it that week, then you're welcome to put the question in. Are you speaking to us, Brian?
Will you speak again to what you just said, to have questions answered? That last sentence, could you rephrase it?
Sure. Can I, was it too Australian for you? So where you came into this meeting, where you joined main stage, there was the button ask a question. You can click that and it opens a form. That's all built in Obvio, by the way. That's just a form. And you could ask a question any time of the day or night. That will sit there ready for the next call. We will answer it whether you're present or not. And then that would be in the recording on that YouTube live stream. And you could scrub back through it and you would find your answer if you weren't able to make it. That's what the thinking is there. Yeah.
Thanks.
Cool. You're welcome.
Good day, mate, and night.
Thanks, mate.
You're welcome.
All right. So Muddy had noticed that Active Campaign integration is now live on Obvio. You want to speak to that, Blue?
Like Muddy fell asleep for a couple of months. It's been live.
Is
for a
that
couple
the
of months.
latest? Is that the latest one?
No.
Are you working
No,
on a new one?
The latest one is Go High Level. And we are currently, we're about to start testing ConvertKit.
ConvertKit. That's what I was thinking of. So I thought ConvertKit was live. So I missed that.
Not yet, but we're close. The developer who is working on that is putting it onto our test environment for us to do some testing to make sure it works. And then it goes on to our staging environment for us to do a little bit harder testing. And then it goes live. So we're close. So we'll see how that rolls out. But my gut is that ConvertKit will be done before the end of this month. And then we have the next one, or the next implementation or integration that we're working towards is a platform called Entreport.
Sarah asked a question in the chat if Kajabi is still on the roadmap.
It is, but Kajabi is a really weird platform for a number of reasons. And that's probably something that we will tackle next year or early next year, around the same time that we tackle ClickFunnels. Both of those platforms are platforms that we would like to start using, but are a little bit more difficult to work with. And so many people who use those platforms also use other platforms to actually send email and to manage their CRM. So while those platforms have the capability of doing that, both ClickFunnels and Kajabi, my experience anyway with people who are using Obvio is most of the people who are using Kajabi are also using like Keep or MailChimp or ActiveCampaign or, one of the other platforms to send emails. So the integration straight back into Kajabi is a little bit lower on the priority level, given how people generally use those platforms. That is our experience anyway. ClickFunnels is a whole other story, but the main reason that we are slow to work on ClickFunnels is because ClickFunnels Classic very much doesn't have a real true CRM built into it. ClickFunnels 2.0 does, but ClickFunnels 2.0 is very much still an actively developed, a product that's in active development, and their API access. In other words, what Obvio would use to get access to ClickFunnels 2.0 to build an integration just got released last week. So it's very brand new, and they still have a couple of things that we're waiting on. Like the ability to merge a custom field into a broadcast, which is how you would send your login URLs. And while ClickFunnels 2.0 does have custom fields, they call them attributes, they don't currently have the ability to use those attributes anywhere. It's a very interesting thing. And with that being said, Obvio is still a very much actively developed product. So something about glass houses and throwing stones, perhaps?
Yeah, that's good practice. So Brian, you were saying about, does the chat get recorded? It does not get recorded with these calls. Making sure I see all these comments that came through. Okay, Muddy had a engagement question. What are some of the best practices you or your clients have done to encourage attendees to keep their camera on during the event?
Generally speaking, we only interact with people who have their cameras on. So when it comes to questions, when it comes to actually engaging our audience, like if you stand on the Sage Studios stage, the faces that you'll see in the gallery, or the gallery view that you'll see, won't include people who have their cameras turned off. And then we just tell people, turn your cameras on. Say it nicer than that. But encouragement is usually the only thing you can do. It's not uncommon for our tech team to actually go through everybody who has their camera turned off. Inside of Zoom, you can, in the participants pane, you can hover over individual participants and click on the three dots and say, ask to start video. So if we have a very low video participation, our tech team will actually go through and do that to like a few hundred people to try and get people to turn on their cameras. And not everybody says yes when you do that, of course, because they have their cameras off for a reason. But it does sometimes boost participation. And I would say if we submit, or if we ask 100 people to turn their camera on, probably 1/3 of them actually will. So just to give you some rough numbers when we do that.
Yeah, I've worked on some events where we've done some little tricks where it's visual. And so coming back from the break, little competition, someone with a fancy hat, the person with the coolest hat, wins a prize, whatever, right? Such a simple thing to do. It's fun, it's easy, and it makes people turn their cameras on because you need to see their hats. And so, and then you get a bit of fun interaction between people, and they see some weird hats. They could work.
Yeah, and it's. I think it's also not uncommon. Like when we were first doing this, we would ask the attendees to turn on their screen or their cameras. When I say when we were first doing this in April of 2020, April, May, June of 2020, and Sarah, at that time, nobody was used to doing this. Right? This was a brand new format that Zoom existed, but at this scale, in this type of way, wasn't something that you saw. So we had a lot of people with their cameras turned on initially. And we had to say things like, all right, folks, so one of the things that, if you've ever stood on stage before, that one of the best ways to get going as a speaker is to actually be able to see your audience. And unlike webinars or live streams, I can actually see you. And then we'd have an over-the-shoulder camera that showed the gallery views that you were standing in front of, and say, so this isn't like anything that you've ever attended before. This is a live interactive experience, but in order for it to be interactive, you have to interact. The way you do that is by turning on your camera so we can see you, and so that we can engage with you. And then I would point out people, right? Like, because the first few was me being the MC because I understood the format better than anybody else. So at least for our events, I'm not talking globally, I'm just talking about our events specifically. And, I would say stuff like, let's see, James, Justin, it's so good to see you here. Thanks for turning on your camera. Love the little bit of red uplight you've got going on in the background. That's awesome. Stephanie, are you in a car? All right. Well, listen, thanks for turning on your camera. Really appreciate that. But remember, 10 and 2, keep your both hands on the wheel. Jamie, don't look so nervous. It's going to be okay, right? In fact, look to the person next to you. Look to Muddy, look to Jamie. Will you guys just tell each other it's going to be okay for me? Cool. All right. Awesome. And David, you look awful comfortable. I'm glad you're here. Thanks for being on a phone, even though you're here. And Nathan, out for a walk in nature while still committed to being on this event. So good to have you with us. If I didn't mention your name, it's because I can't see you. If you would, please go ahead, turn your cameras on, because the host who's going to be coming out next is also going to be able to see you. And for them to be their best self, it's great if you would show up and be yours as well. Something like that, right? Like, so it really is just about like training the audience and telling them what you want to do, but not just telling them what you want to do, but why you want to do them. Right? So they understand the reason. It's not just, I want to be creepy and, see you inside of your environment. Like, it's not that. It's that as a speaker, it's easier for us to show up as our best self when people are in the room. Right? So those are some of the things that we do.
Yeah, I agree. And the earlier you can do that in your event, the better, because you want to really reinforce the fact that it's live and as soon as you start naming people, people feel like it's much more engaging. Like it just works.
Yeah. 100%.
Incidentally, you'll find now that they recommend 9 and 3, not 10 and 2.
Yeah. I know. I'm just old. I know. Literally, so this is funny. All right, this is, because it doesn't really matter. But literally, as I was learning how to drive, that transition was happening. And I would be like, one day I went into like driver's ed or whatever, and it was 10 and 2. And it's like literally the next day, it was like, all right, it's 9 and 3. And I'm like, what? Huh? Anyway,
so I want a Tesla, so I don't have to touch the wheel at all. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, now we're talking. Although interestingly, you still do, right? So
right, I know. Just every now and again.
I'll tell you, I drove we drove back from Orlando, and the car that we have is well, you've been in it. It's a BMW, and it does have some like auto drive features and auto steer. And I barely drove the entire way back because on the highway, it just goes. Like I have to leave my hand on the wheel and I kind of pay attention, but it speeds up, it slows down, it changes lanes if I ask it to. It's just, it's pretty awesome. And then something I didn't realize, because we don't do this, I don't have this around our house. We don't have any of the interstate, like the I-series highways anywhere near Charleston. But in traffic, the car actually does just drive itself. You just have, what it does is it has like eye sensors. If you don't look at the road, it beeps at you. But if you're going under 40, but over 20, like if essentially you're in traffic, you just can sit there and not do anything. It was exciting going through Jacksonville for 45 minutes in traffic. Didn't have to do anything.
All right. So we've driven way off topic right now.
Oh, listen, that was your fault. I blame you for that one because of the Tesla comment.
Fair enough.
All right. What's next?
Can I wrap up that little conversation and just say one of the biggest problems that I'm having more now is not people turning on their cameras, but the cameras that are on are facing the ceiling, or they're sending black, right? How many people have the covers or things on their cameras? Yeah, exactly, Muddy. Which really ruins gallery views, right? Because you've got black being sent, and the kind of sucky thing with the way that Zoom works when you can turn someone's camera off is that they can't then turn it back on again, right? When the host disables someone's camera. So I do it, if someone clearly doesn't want to be on camera, but they don't know how to press stop video. And so we're trying to include that in our housekeeping to be able to say, hey, we want everyone's cameras on. If you do not want yours on, please don't just cover the camera or point it at the ceiling. Press stop video, because we want you to turn it on when you can. So anyway, first world problems. Muddy raised your hand. Is this about 9 and 3?
No, I wanted to, I love the responses around engagement and getting people to turn their camera on. One of the things I wanted to point out, because it is unique and really effective for Obvio, is this is a great, I have found that tech check, turning on tech check as part of that onboarding process is a phenomenal opportunity to help people turn their cameras on when it's a low pressure environment. You're not in a big room with a bunch of people, and also to set the culture for the event and let people know this is an interactive event. We want everyone to keep your cameras on, and kind of have that conversation before they get to the event, really, and ideally like the day before they get to the event, so that they can kind of be set up and know that, right, and be camera ready. So wanted to point that out.
It's a great point. We often, more recently, I have found that I've been using tech check less, but for some of the for the smaller events, it can work really, really well, because that level of engagement you just cannot buy. Having an attendee come in and talk to someone as their first experience of your event, particularly if it's a day before, is amazing. It creates amazing engagement. We've got a couple of questions, and now we've got some hands raised. I do just want to make sure, I want to just get to Justin's comment. Put a question in that said, is there a way to copy broadcast messages from one event to another when it's duplicated? It seems like a thing that we need to add. It's a funny one, isn't it, Justin? Because you can kind of see both ways of that. Do you want to have all of the history of the broadcasts in there and have a big long list of broadcasts on a new event? But then you probably do if you want to just duplicate it and then just fire it off again, change the date on it and send it off again. I guess that's what you're thinking about. What do you think, Blue?
I'm thinking about it. Yeah, I'm thinking about it because one of the events I'm running is Martha's event, and her previous one, she had like her 3-day or 2-day reminder. We're live, her check-in, like all the reminders are all set up, and literally the only content I need to go and change is the date, but they don't come over. So now I got to spend the time and actually go and recreate all of those reminders. And she had like 15 reminders in there throughout the event. And so it'd be great to have an option to come over for events where really it is the same event. It's just run again in there, kind of like you can duplicate rooms, or you cannot duplicate areas and rooms. Or if there's a way behind the scenes, if I could put in a request to have those copied, that would be fantastic as well, to have a starting point.
Actually don't know if that's possible, but send an email in, Justin, include a link to the event itself, to the old one and the new one. And we can see if we can have one of the developers move those over. And then Grant, I think it's Giannis who worked on the duplicate feature. Let's just that feels like a feature that should get added for sure. Like, and actually, like just exactly how Justin said, like, do we want to copy over? Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. I'll add that. Yeah. Scott, go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you. One quick comment. Blue, when you were talking about engagement and right at the screen, I spent a lot of time on radio and TV. And one thing I've learned about these things, and every time I do them myself, is I'm doing the same thing. I am aggressively going after everybody on that screen pretty much the entire time I'm here. And calling them out, having fun with them, and just poking at them. And what you'll find is, in smaller groups, I don't really care, but when it gets bigger, if you don't lead with that kind of fun, aggressive nature, they do drift away. They have a whole lot going on. So I really appreciate when you were saying that, because man, it makes all the difference in the world. Also, thank you for turning me on to the ATEM, because you have just cost me $7,000 and it's fun and I want to spend more. And I have a whole wall. I need more computers. This is getting to be too much fun. And one question.
It really is an addictive thing to start working on. Before you know it, you'll have a room that looks like Muddy or Grant's. And then after that,
I've already got a heck of an audio studio, but now I've got 5 monitors in here now. And here's the cool thing. It was 3 hellish weeks to figure it out. But man, the day it works, it's like you just paid off all your debt. It's like, yes, it works. It's awesome. It's getting, you know what I'm talking about for sure.
Oh yeah.
A quick question, completely off that topic, but I just wanted to be untimely and put that in there. I noticed and this may be just I haven't dug deep enough again, the offline message, and it may be related to my first question about messing up the timing. I noticed you have offline message for the design area, and then you have them for the room area. Are they different in how that works, or are they the same?
Yeah. Yeah, they are different. The offline, under design, the offline page is actually if you turn the event offline. So on the event settings page up at the top, there's a toggle to turn the event on or off. On the event offline page under design, that page defines the behavior of the event that's offline. You can either automatically forward an event that's offline to another URL from that page on in one of the settings slide outs on that page, or you can customize it to display an offline message for the event, right? So it's not uncommon for us when we're working on a new event and the client has already released the dashboard URL to attendees. If they've done that, without asking us or telling us, we'll turn the event offline and put a message on there that says, congratulations on signing up for event name. We can't wait to see you October 26th through the 28th. This dashboard, please come back and visit this dashboard, on the 25th of October to get all the details you'll need to make your event a success, or something like that. Now that's the event offline. On the area pages, you're going to see a button that I believe says offline text. And when you click on that, there is a heading and a body. And essentially what that is for is the text that is shown to your attendees when they log into the dashboard and click the main stage button, but you haven't turned the area on yet. Okay. So if you haven't turned the area on yet, they're going to get, the default says area name is currently offline. So if your area is called the main stage, it'll say main stage is currently offline, and that's all it says. But you can change, and that's the title. You can change both of those, or you can change that in the title box and say, the main stage is not yet open. And then in the body section below, you can put here's a list of times when the main stage will be open, as an example. So you could put some rough timing in it and then save that. It's one of the areas that we haven't gotten what we call our inline editor in place, which is kind of like, what you see under design, where you see a preview of what the page looks like and you hover over the different elements and click the gearbox to edit those elements. The area offline page is still done via text, but the formatting of it, much like the some of the other pages that we have, takes the branding from the login page. So whatever you do on your login page, from a logo perspective, it'll be there, and background color perspective, things like that. The branding itself, or the color settings, come from the login page. So that's the difference between the two.
Great, thank
Hey,
you.
Blue, can you show the screen what you're talking about? I'm very visual and I wanted to follow that, but is there a way to share your screen or have Grant?
Sure. So
I'm not an audio learner, sorry.
So right here, so the first offline page is this one here, and the default is event offline, right? Please check back again, or contact support for access. Actually, that may not be the default. I think we've customized that. But you can click this little gear here and make changes to the background, to the styling. And then I think it's under event offline where you change the text. You can have a title and a body, or you can turn redirect to another URL on, and then type in a URL. So now when this event is offline, which you do by going to the event page, go to settings, offline, and click save, then what'll happen is anybody who goes to update.obv.io or tries to use their magic link or whatever to access the page will wind up at Google, because we have just forwarded that. Now, of course, there's absolutely no reason for you to forward your attendees to Google. Just using that as an example. Where this comes in handy is, let's say you have a sign-up page for your next event, and you want anybody who goes to the dashboard for your last event to automatically get forwarded to the sign-up or the RSVP for the next one. That's an easy thing to do there. Or let's say, like in our case, sometimes what we'll do is the client is, I'll use Sage as an example. We don't actually technically do this, but you'll understand what I mean. At the end of the event, we made an offer for everybody to join Leap. So what you can do is you can forward your event dashboard to the Leap onboarding page or the Leap enrollment page after the event is over. So if anybody comes back to the TVE dashboard, they would just see the Leap enrollment page. So there's a number of ways that you can use that. But what Scott was asking about specifically is under Zoom areas. You click on the area itself, you're going to see this offline text button. And when you click on that, you see offline title and offline description. And you can customize what that says right there, including adding HTML for like embeddable videos. You can add images. So quite a bit of stuff that you can do with the offline pages. You just can't preview them at this point. In order to preview it, what you'd have to do then is log in as an attendee and click on the button that leads you to that page or to that area, and then you'll see the offline text or the offline information.
Thank you. Very visual learner. Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
Okay. Justin was asking for broadcast messages. Is there a limit to how far before or after the event we can send messages?
Yes, 7 days. And you can only send one before or after the event. And it's 7 days before and 7 days after.
And then Muddy was asking, what's the best way to run multiple instances of Zoom on one machine, Mac and or PC?
Well, first off, my experience with running multiple Zoom meetings on a PC is hit and miss. So I tend to avoid that. And it has to do with stuff that I don't understand. But bottom line, some cameras, some PCs won't allow the camera to be shown in both Zoom instances. But beyond that, this is actually a Zoom level a Zoom level setting, and you actually need a Zoom account in order to be able to do that. And it has to be a business account, which means you need, I believe, at a minimum of 10 Zoom licenses in order to have the setting turned on by Zoom. So it's a complicated thing to do, at least the way Zoom provides it. But I'll provide you with the this is it. The help desk article from Zoom on how to do it, because they define it, because it's a feature that they turn on. But like I said, it really comes down to you need to have 10 Zoom licenses in order to be able to do that.
It's a weird thing, Muddy, where we can be using a totally different Zoom account that allows multiple meetings to be launched, and then use all the start links from Obvio, and it works. You can just launch as many as you need to. It is possible to launch Zoom OSC multiple times. I don't know if you've done that, but you can do multiple instances of OSC, and then you could launch. So I've done that a few times, and so I've ran sort of 3 different meetings. And just recently, I ran 3 meetings on one Mac Mini, and I had Dante multi-track audio going in and out of each one, and so I had mix minus on each one of those instances on one machine, and it worked great. I could talk from those 3 different ones into the different ones. So not a lot of redundancy in that, and so I needed to have another way of making sure I could get my camera into those meetings if I needed to. And so we had that set up. But yeah, there is some interesting things. Zoomtopia is on at the moment, which is Zoom's annual event. And so it mostly talks about corporate stuff. You know, they're adding all these extra features that really I'm not interested in. A bunch of more whiteboard things and not Google Docs, but Docs, and being able to do collaborative things. They've announced a bunch of those sorts of things. But in the background, there has been a few other things that have been announced that is interesting to watch. And so we're seeing more and more of what was Zoom ISO and Zoom OSC coming into the actual Zoom products. And so Zoom Rooms now supporting SDI in and out, deck link cards out in Zoom Rooms. That's very interesting. Dante support in and out of Zoom Rooms is interesting. And then they've got a plugin for Unreal Engine as well, which is very interesting too. So for us that are playing around with gallery views and how we do some fancy 3D gallery views, they're making that much easier with Unreal Engine and a Zoom plugin for that. So ISO video coming in, ISO audio, and then being able to trigger it. Just quite interesting stuff. So there's a few things that are coming around. So these production specific things that Zoom is opening up a bit, which is exciting to watch. Cool. I think that's the key questions there. No hands raised. Still got a little bit more time. We tend to allocate a couple of hours for these, but we're at midnight. I'm always happy to end early. We have when daylight saving kicks in. We've just had daylight saving, and so it's an hour worse, and then you'll have it soon, and then it gets 2 hours worse. And so, but anyway, I'm just happy that I can share my early morning with you people. Any other questions or comments or queries?
I have one.
Oh, Jenny, hello.
I knew it. I tried not to have a question. Okay. I think I've actually solved it just sitting here. working through it. So remember when way months ago, we discussed that I was going to have to be able to allow them to have a second camera going, that they're going to have to be able to have all that. So I did some tests. I set up my sewing table and I did some test run because I was really concerned about vibration from the machine on the phone. And for me, when I set up, I do a tripod over my shoulder, that kind of thing that drops right down under the machine. For people who don't have all that, and they're setting, and I set up on the table with their cell phone, and I'm looking at recommending that, if they can, to get the spider tripod that can grab onto the machine. I'm still is there a stabilization? My question is there a stabilization? And I know on cameras and on my camera there is, but is there a stabilization on cell phones for video that I'm just not finding? Because I looked in my phone, but I have a crappy phone. So
yeah, well, that's the thing. I think that the ones that would support that, you're probably not going to get consistency across everyone's phones, and so do you notice that if you had a little stand on the table with the sewing machine that the vibration is noticeable?
Well, I did it several different ways because I actually have experience doing this, and I can put towels down. I actually find if I put multiple levels of felt down, then with like a thick towel, it does pretty good. But that, again, that's using camera and not cell phone. And I know most of the people are going to have their main big screen as their computer, so that they can watch the demo and all that. Then we've got the goings on with them individually, when I'm going to want to be able to see what they're doing individually. I'm just trying to anticipate problems because it's coming up. It's coming up real quick. And
do you know there's lots of these like selfie sticks / tripods that are really inexpensive, right?
yeah, I did find some. Yeah, you're right. I mean, here's one for $5.99.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I was just having a quick look at Walmart, right? And straight away I'm seeing like these little stands.
Well,
$6.
that stand would fall over because you get the vibration of the machine, and if anything, you got fabric going on and things like
Yeah,
that.
no,
I've got one of those, and they knock over really easy.
I understand. What I'm thinking of is more where that gets placed, and ideally it's not on the table that the sewing machine's on, right? But there's these ones that would go off the floor, and would be able to show the sewing machine. So I think there's some options, and that's the direction I'd be going, rather than trying to find the vibration or the stabilization settings. Like just getting it off that table will make such a big difference. People.
Okay, this might be a question for next week or the week after when I have Obvio set up. Blue, stop smiling. It is I know he kind of just seen all over his face. Now you made me forget my question. Never mind.
Yeah, don't let me distract you. I'm actually working on Nancy Hand's dashboard right now, so I'm barely paying attention. I know Grant's got you.
All right. So my question is, and this is probably so stupid. I'm sorry. Okay, so they're using their computer for their main screen and to be able to watch me, and how is that going to show up on my screen? Am I going to have two visuals for each student if they've got a second camera going with that second link? Is that a second link just explain to me some of the tech in that,
Yeah.
how that
So
works.
very simple. They would be joining that Zoom call twice, two separate devices, a laptop and a mobile phone, and that's
Okay.
and so it's going to show in the same way that you're seeing us right now. If you set us to a gallery view, this meeting, then you're going to see all the gallery view. Now they won't necessarily be together, right? Those two separate ones. So what you would want, the thing that's going to help you is that when they're the key thing we talked about this, that you want to allow people to join from multiple devices, right? To be able to join multiple
Yes.
times at the same time. When that happens, they're going to come in with the same name. So both their when they've joined twice, their name will be the same. And what you can do is you can sort. You can drag and drop the gallery view, right? You can move them around. And so you could put them, you could have their face above and their sewing machine below, or you could, have it side by side. You could decide, and you could drag those around. And so that could work really well. But yeah, there's nothing special going on there. They're just joining twice. You're seeing two separate video feeds coming in.
Well, I'm getting ready to do that tech video and
Mhm.
how to join, and I just want to make sure I get the languaging and just get that right. And I'll
Yeah.
pop it in the Facebook, just have you all peruse it, make sure it sounds. So I can drag and drop the gallery views to sort people and
You can
get them together.
You can play with
'Cause
that right
can-
now. On this call, you could just drag and drop. You sort of you can sort them around. It does change if people start raising their hands. You can't move people around when people raise a hand. But when they're not raised, you can move that all around however
Okay.
you wish.
Okay.
So, and I can imagine that when you're doing kind of some coaching on some things and you're watching what people are doing, you might even spotlight people and spotlight their sewing machine or something, and then you're speaking to what they're doing exactly, and that sort of stuff I think could work really well.
That's what I'm hoping for, but yeah, we're gonna just
I
we're gonna
think
give it a whirl. See how it
absolutely,
goes.
and you would very quickly become the expert in this, right? Because in how to do this, you're already an expert clearly in your craft. What I mean is you'll become an expert in how to do this online, and by getting a small group together, you get 3-4 of these of people just to come on and join twice and do what you're talking about, then you will very quickly know the things that you need to tell people in order to help them do it, and just do a little test, run through something where you're all doing something together and see where that goes. But Jenny, I think you're awesome. And every time you say things like, this is a stupid question, or I'm silly, or whatever, I just think you're the exact opposite, and that words have power, and just be careful about your self-talk, because I think you're amazing.
Thank you. Appreciate
it. You're welcome. Anyone else?
And Jenny, your camera view looks phenomenal.
Well, I can't say who that is, did all that for me. Someone called Muddy.
I mean, I walked you through it, but you did it, and we're seeing the results of it today. So I just wanted to give you some praise for that. You show up really well.
Week, thank you. Well, next week I've got my whole other half of the studio up. So what I've done, I 8 hours yesterday trying to get this tiny space mobile. And so I have put my whole video setup on a rolling cart, so I can flip it around and go over to my sewing station, because I was really stressed out trying to figure out how to do that. And 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning, it finally hit me. Just put it on wheels. and make sure it's stable. And so my only other problem is having my main computer constantly hooked up is pain in my derriere. And so I'm gonna have to, my first thing I purchase when I'm start making money is another computer. Yeah. But thank you, Muddy. You did all the hard work.
It really does look great, but the other thing is your internet has never been so stable either on all the calls that we do. So
I paid for it now. I got Xfinity.
You were stealing it before?
No, I just pay a lot more money.
I'm sure.
No, but stealing it was,
it's worth it.
Yeah, I after we talked a month or so ago, I did the money and got Xfinity, and it's been really good. Thank you.
You sold your soul to the devil and went
pretty much. Yeah, pretty much.
Well, whatever you're paying, it's worth it, because when we talk about the priorities of what you need to get right with your technology, right up there, number one is internet. Like, there's no point doing anything if your internet's no good. So
well, my other issue is I really want that second camera, and I just cannot find anything else left to sell to buy that second camera. And I'm too old to stand on the street corner. So, it's just sorry. Sorry, it's my sense of humor.
You can start selling your craft.
So yeah, but I just really want that second camera. It's gonna be a necessity. So, but anyway, it's all good. It's finally coming together, and I appreciate everybody and all your patience. And Muddy, I will be booking with you today for that. Yeah, go through. But God bless Muddy. I tell you what, you guys.
He's great. Muddy's great. All right. It's getting close to that time. Some people, whether you're holding on to those last minute questions. Kyle, we haven't heard from you from ages. You normally jump in last minute. Now that hey there.
Well, now that you mentioned it. So like that's been happening to me, and I like to get on these 8 a.m. calls and just listen to see what's happening. But my trip is happening at the end of the month, and so I have been able to integrate some very high level leap shock and awe elements into it. And so I'm so appreciative. And I know that we're getting ready to do a community Zoom. So I said, let me get on Obvio and see what's going on. That might be new. And why Obvio, because it's a small group. Why Obvio instead of just a regular Zoom? And now I'm reminded of why Obvio and not just a regular Zoom. We have our Obvio page. We have our Facebook page with the date on the cover picture, all the things that I learned. Swag is going out. It's been wonderful. Building community. And so I'm here, I'm listening to everything everyone is saying, from the experienced people to the inexperienced people, and it's enriching me. So thank you so much for asking, because that's my update.
That's awesome.
At 10:10.
Well, congratulations, Carl. That's really great to hear. Really great. All right. Anyone else? Anyone else want to share in the share group? Going around the circle. All right. Well, cool. Thank you, everyone. It really is a privilege. You can imagine that that sometimes I don't feel like doing this at this time of night. But every time we get to this, I think, man, this is great. it's a real privilege to be able to journey with everyone and
Love
and help.
this. You,
Oh,
you,
look,
you love it.
I do
Just
love it.
love not to sleep.
That's right. It's overrated. It's great. So we will be back at 5 a.m. I don't know why I always want to say 5 a.m. Pacific, which it is. 8 a.m. Eastern next Wednesday to do all this again. And as we said before, you're welcome to put questions in on the dashboard at any time between now and then. And we will answer those whether you're present or not. Of course, we'd love to see you. And so you also know that there are a couple of different support options. You can always email us at help@obv.io with any questions or issues that you want to work out with us. Also, in Eastern business hours, you can catch us on that little chat option down the bottom left-hand corner of the admin, like in the where the dashboard editor is. There's a little chat button, a little bubble there. You can click that, and you can have a little chat to one of us to try to help you in that moment. So have a play with that, and we look forward to seeing you on another call. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye, everybody.